Guess who got brands talking? Brandlive.co.za.
Hi, Jill.
Oh, there we go. Hi, Diane. How are you?
Great. Thanks for accepting our invitation to do an interview, a very impromptu interview. Really appreciate it.
It's a great pleasure. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. So to our listeners this morning, you're joining Green Ovation, and this morning we're chatting to Gill Hamilton, who is the branch manager for African Climate Reality Projects. Jill, obviously this morning's international news about Donald Trump winning the elections in the United States should be of a concern for those of us working in the climate change space, particularly in Africa. Would you agree?
So we don't know very much about Trump's policies, but we do think that he's not a great environmentalist at heart. And there have been threats of him pulling the states out of the COP negotiations and all sorts of other claims like that. So yes, we are concerned about the world from an environmental perspective with Donald Trump taking power. But I think we're going to have to wait and watch the space.
Great. I think from our side, we've certainly seen in the green space, and not only in South Africa, but in Europe as well, that there is concern that such a major superpower, if we can call it that, if they were to pull from these negotiations and withdraw from the Paris Agreement, there will obviously be repercussions in Africa, where we are hardest hit by the impact and the negative effects of climate change. What is it that, for those people who are unaware of what African Climate Reality Project is and what they do, can you tell us a bit more about what it is that you are doing?
African Climate Reality Project is the African branch for former American Vice President Al Gore's Climate Reality Project. So those people who remember watching the movie An Inconvenient Truth will know that was Al Gore's really big initiative, and he subsequently started an NGO after that movie was aired, and they've been doing a lot of work internationally. So we do a lot of policy work internationally, and then we do a lot of mobilization and grassroots communication. In Africa, we're really excited because we have almost 600 officially trained climate leaders who work with government, businesses, NGOs, and scientists, and who do a lot of our groundwork out there to talk to people about climate change. So it's really a group of 600 activists around Africa. We also have a presence in 25 countries.
That's awesome.
Is that enough, Diane?
I think that's great. I just wanted to ask, what does a typical day in the life of ACRP look like? So when you're going into the office, is that a strange question to ask?
I laugh, Diane, because it seems at the moment that there is no typical day.
Okay.
I have been in this position for about 5 months, and every single day I wake up, and I really love what I do, I must say that. I wake up, but I'm not quite sure what I'm going to be doing that day. We have been doing a lot of, in South Africa particularly, a lot of talking to government and other civil society organizations, particularly around areas that really concern us, like nuclear energy and the lack of transparency around nuclear energy, not to mention the environmental and human rights concerns we have around environmental energy. But we also do really exciting things, like we are starting to understand a lot more about what the potential is for renewable energy in South Africa. And for your listeners out there who are not aware, the most recent statistics show that South Africa's wind potential, so in other words, the ability to generate energy from wind and from solar, is absolutely incredible. So our wind potential is better than the wind potential in both Spain and in Germany. and this is not just along the coast, which is what we originally thought, but the CSIR studies are showing that wind potential all over South Africa is incredibly high. So as long as we've got the political will, South Africa can reduce its carbon emissions very rapidly by 2040, and the statistics that are being thrown about are reducing carbon emissions significantly and increasing our energy from renewable energy to about 70% by 2040.
That's great. That's amazing. Can you tell us again?
Sorry, I went a bit off point.
That's fine. I think you've actually led me on to the next question. Why should people care about climate change in South Africa? And we often have this discussion in many different circles that it's often perceived as a middle-class white issue, climate change, this talk about renewable energy. Why should the ordinary citizen in South Africa, regardless of where they live or where they come from, why should they care?
Wow, that is a really big question. So South Africa specifically will become much hotter, much drier, and our living conditions are going to become much more difficult. So let me explain to you that at the moment we've got the COP negotiations happening in Marrakesh. If, as we agreed in Paris last year, that we are going to globally try and keep our temperatures, the global average temperature, to just less than 2 degrees Celsius, the implication for Africa is that our interior temperatures are probably going to go up by an average of 4 degrees Celsius, and around the coast between 1 and 3 degrees Celsius.
Wow.
I hear you saying, wow, yes. The implication is that if we're already hot, and this drought has given us a little taste of what is to come with climate change, if we are already hot and if we are already using a lot of water to grow food and to drink and to actually power our fossil fuel energy production system, so coal-fired power stations use a lot of water, then imagine how much more water we're going to need. So in a country that already has a lot of water scarcity, we're going to have to be able to use less water. We also are going to have to change the way that we do agriculture. So when you talk about this being a middle-class concern, this is really a very big misconception because, and this is one of the things that African Climate Reality is fighting about, that middle-class people will feel the problems, but it's most likely that the poorest of the poor are going to suffer. We know that in Limpopo, there are already people who are suffering more from food insecurity because of the water, because of the drought and the water situation. But this is going to be further compounded by the drought. An interesting piece of information I read the other day is that through the impact of climate change, we're expecting droughts to last between 10 and 15 years at a time.
Oh my God.
Now, the South African drought has not been half as long as that, and look at how we're suffering.
Yeah. That's quite frightening. I think most people need to be aware of the realities of climate change. And in fact, recently I met with a climate change activist as well, and she said to me that often we are unable to connect the dots between the little actions and the little decisions that we make and the negative impact it has on the environment. Your thoughts on that?
Definitely. So I think each of us has a responsibility to act now and to think about the environment all the time. But we also need to lobby and to fight for systemic change in South Africa. So more public transport systems, no more production from fossil fuels. So think of all the water that we use to generate electricity from coal. And those are the kinds of things that we need to fight for. So every person needs to say to somebody else, hey, are you saving water? What are you doing to help prevent climate change?
Great. I think I do need to ask just one last question. And again, I'm referring to Trump and these negotiations that are taking place in Marrakesh. I mean, a lot of people, in fact, he was the one who said that climate change is a rumor started by the Chinese. But while these negotiations are taking place, I believe that there's a big five that the African Climate Reality Project has of these negotiations. What is your big five?
So, Diane, we sent out a survey to all our activists and the people that we've been talking to. And the information they brought back to us are 5 main issues that we want our negotiators, our African group of negotiators, to negotiate for at Marrakesh. Those 5 are, firstly, fossil-free energy for all, then climate justice, so that's strengthening climate resilience, and climate-smart transport and buildings, that's thinking about energy efficiency buildings and low-carbon transport. And then a big one for many African countries is sustainable agriculture, forestry, and land management. And this relates back to not only being efficient doing climate-smart farming and agriculture, but also about managing our carbon sinks. And carbon sinks are things that almost absorb this is the simplified version for you, almost absorb the carbon emissions that we are creating as people. And then our last big 5 ask was asking for key resources for mitigation and adaptation. So for many African countries, even though we really want to move towards a carbon-free or a decarbonized world, we don't necessarily have the funding and the capacity and the knowledge to do these things. So that was our last big 5 ask, was for key resources for mitigation and adaptation measures.
Great. So, Jill, you've just now touched on a few things that I just need to ask one more question. You were saying, and I agree, that in African countries, and we will be hardest hit by climate change. It's inevitable. It's been proven. And you are correct in saying that we don't quite have the capital that is required to invest in these key resources for mitigation or adaptation. Do you believe that there's a role for small business, for entrepreneurs to actually develop and innovate climate solutions that can be scaled across the continent?
Absolutely, Diane, without a question. Diane, before we talk about this, I just want to explain to your listeners, because not everybody might be familiar with these terms, which there's a lot of jargon that we tend to use.
I know, forgive me.
The question is, mitigation really means looking at how we are producing our energy, and so we hope to mitigate against carbon emissions by putting in fossil-free energy generation. And then adaptation is how we adapt to the climate situation. So adaptation often refers to water and types of agriculture. And so there are a whole lot of things under that, but that just makes it a bit easier so that people understand what we're talking about. But there is definitely a role for entrepreneurs. So there's a role for small businesses and for entrepreneurial actions, whether it's finding a technological fix for some of the problems that we face. So the story that Kumi Naidu likes to tell is about the 4 Nigerian girls who were so brilliant for a science project. They learned to generate energy from using their urine as a source, which is quite remarkable. And then I think more recently there's been talk about people, I'm not sure who the entrepreneur is, who's busy developing a system to take water out of the atmosphere and turn it into drinking water that you can use in your home. So those are 2 really exciting moves. And then a third one is on the kinds of businesses and entrepreneurs who are busy changing our energy systems. So people who are supplying small solar panels to homes in townships and to smaller homes, and then people who've been putting in solar panels into residential buildings and such like. So I see a huge scope for for entrepreneurs and for small businesses to move into a space that is quite new and quite remarkable.
Thank you so much, Gill, for your time. We really are grateful that you made some time for us to shed some light on some key issues around climate change, around the negotiations that are taking place in Marrakesh at the moment. We are looking forward to your next Green Drinks, I believe, which is happening towards the end of November.
That's right.
So we'll encourage listeners to get onto the website and for more information.
Yes, that's great.
Yeah.
Can I give you our website address?
Awesome. Go ahead.
It's climatereality.co.za, and then please have a look at our Facebook page. We've got a really big following on our Facebook page, and that's also Climate Reality Africa. And you can look for us on Twitter, which is @AfricaCRP.
Awesome. Thank you. Listeners, you've joined Diane at the Greenovation Show, and we've had the privilege of hearing from Gill Hamilton, who is the branch manager for the African Climate Reality Project. We'll speak to you next time.
Thanks, Diane. Bye-bye.
Cheers.
You're listening to brandlive.co.za, an industry first in the world of internet radio. Not only are we an internet radio station, we are an internet radio platform for your brand. So why not expose your brand to potentially thousands of listeners and improve your customer relationships and brand equity with podcasts and live broadcasts? Be sure to check brandlive.co.za for more information. brandlive.co.za, harnessing the power of internet radio.
Great. It was awesome. This morning's show, the Greenovation Show, coming to you live from Brand Live at 27 Boxes in Melville. And on our show, as you know, we discuss climate change, sustainable innovation, and the role which entrepreneurs, innovators, disruptors can play in fixing our climate problems in South Africa and across the continent, of course. Please tune in again next week. And in the meantime, check out our website. It's www.greenovationsA.coza. Follow me on Twitter @DD_Naidu. We'll touch base with you next week.
Have you ever thought of the power of talk radio and what it can do for your business? Well, brandlive.co.za has been developed with that in mind and brings you an international first. The brandlive.co.za internet radio platform gives businesses a new voice and opportunity to change the conventional communication platform that a newsletter represents. Facilitated by leading industry experts, the brandlive.co.za platform offers a high-quality digital talk radio medium for companies to communicate their new developments, create customer-centric radio content, develop an added value in terms of client relations, and create a better flow in terms of feedback and interactivity to their existing customer base and market. Simultaneously, the platform can also open a brand or business to a new group of potential customers. Technology is constantly shaping the way we communicate and consume information, which presents your business with a simple and affordable way to address your customer or client in a modern, multifaceted setting. Internet radio is now available for your business, a powerful corporate branded tool to complement your existing communication platforms. In today's competitive market, you need to use every tool available to retain and cultivate loyal customers. Online corporate branded radio offers you an exciting range of communication tools uniquely tailored to your brand and addressing your communication challenges. With the brandlive.co.za radio platform, you have the power to brand your business in the way you like. You are able to develop content with your own production team and have the opportunity to interact with your customers in real time on issues such as quality assurance, customer service, and any other operational matters. Brandlive.co.za. Now your brand has a voice.